Hello, fictional. Welcome to the Fiction Series X. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei was the angel of darkness? Part 1. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. In a place full of misery, destruction, and savagery, there was a blonde young man standing looking at the corpses in front of him. However, that young man is not an ordinary person. He has an advantage, namely the 12 golden wings on his back. The merits of the young man are identical to one of the great factions, that is, the angel faction. But there was one thing that distinguished the young man from the other angels, namely that the halo, the circle on his head, was not a circle, but a very beautiful golden crown. The young man stood with a body full of blood, but all the blood did not belong to him, but the blood of the enemy that he had crushed. His 12 angel wings were suddenly flapped very widely, which was able to make a golden light shine very brightly. Any enemies who sees the light created by the young man's wings, the eyes of his enemies will burn with golden flames. The young man was an angel sent directly by the god to eradicate the unholy rebels, be it the fallen angels or the devils. All whom he considered enemies would be killed by the young man, whether it be women, men, or children, all would have painful deaths, for him all painful deaths were very worthy for the god's rebels. The young man was a being called the archangel, the first angel created by the god himself. He was created with the 7 lights of the highest heaven, which has almost the same power as the gods who created it. He is known as the general of angels, the heir of God who has tremendous power. The young man had served his creator very sincerely for a very long time, without expecting anything in return. Therefore, the gods gave him a gift that no other angels would ever get, namely the golden crown on his head. The crown is a sign, which means that the young man is the only leader of the angels, who must be respected by anything on earth, as well as anything in the sky. Extremely holy creatures, immortals being who can never fall. But all the gifts he had acquired, all the nicknames he had acquired, and all the divine powers he had gained, had all disappeared in a matter of moment. After he had committed a very great evil, he had to eventually fall into the human world, without carrying his divine power. The mistake that the archangel had made was a very big mistake. A mistake that all beings can never make, and a mistake that will be unforgivable. That is, at the moment when he was discovering the god who had been so badly wounded, all the divine power, the infinite grace, was now almost completely gone. Of course, it is a very impossible thing that the gods, who has created all creatures, has now been seriously injured because of the actions of one of the creatures that himself has created. Seeing this, of course, made the archangel very angry. With his holy power, he was able to eliminate thousands of enemy troops who had ambushed his creator. Of course, with the coming of one of his greatest creation, made God unravel a warmful smile. The god spoke in a very soft voice, which was able to make the archangel who heard it now shed his tears. The tears have a very extraordinary form, which is golden in color, which gives rise to a fragrant fragrance that exceeds any flower in heaven. God finally said something to the angel who had served him for millions of years, which was able to make the archangel shed tears again. But after a moment of silence, the archangel slowly took out the sword of light from the palm of his right hand. The sword was made of golden light, sparkling exquisitely, and made of the holy light that had shaped itself. The archangel's eyes suddenly closed because he would not be able to see what he was about to do. He slowly raised his right hand up, accompanied by his whole body shaking violently. And then, clash. In a house that looks not so big, it is not even worthy of being called a luxurious house. There was a young man who was fast asleep. But all of a sudden, the young man woke up from his sleep with a body full of sweat. The young man sat on his own bed with a hunting breath, cold sweat had soaked his whole body, as if he had just had a nightmare. What is the meaning of that dream? The young man said in a trembling voice. He was both shocked and frightened by the dream he had just had. He had never even had a dream like that before, but today he has just experienced a dream that is very, very confusing and scary, plus the dream feels very real to him. The young man quickly turned on the light of his room, because he was currently engulfed with great fear and confusion. Click. When the room light was successfully turned on, it appeared that a room was not too big, with neatly arranged items. Also, the appearance of the young man who was not clearly visible before due to the dark, has now been seen very clearly. The young man had black spiky hair, fair skin and also a handsome face. The young man was named Yadamichi Ryuma, a young man who was still 17 years old. The young man had not lived in this house before, but rather he was a person who was not from here. Previously he lived in another city with his parents, but after a major event in his life, he decided to live here. Also, his parents had previously enrolled him in a famous academy in the city, namely Kuo City. But he forgot the name of the academy, but he still remembered that today was his first day of entry. Dismissing all the bad thoughts of the dream he had just had, Ryuma quickly walked to the bathroom in order to clean his body before he set off to start a new life. On a street that looks quite quiet, there is a young man with pointed black hair, walking leisurely while staring around him. The young man was none other than Yadamichi Ryuma, who was walking to arrive at his destination academy. Ryuma walked while staring around him in order to remember the path he used because he was a newcomer. Of course, he also didn't want to get lost on his way home. He was also seen carrying a brochure which contained information about the academy he was going to, and he also felt lucky because in the brochure there was also a floor plan of the academy. Finally, after spending some time on his journey, the young man was now able to see the destination in front of him. That is an academy that has large buildings. Ryuma can immediately conclude that the academy in front of him is his destination this time. Ryuma looked at the gate of the academy before him with a slight smile, because it was only this time that he could see the academy which was famous for its very beautiful students. All the disciples who walked past him then just looked at him with a puzzled look. Even though he felt a little uncomfortable, he still accepted it, considering that he was a new student at this academy. Every gaze from the male disciples who happened to pass by around him, they all gave him a sharp look, as if they disliked his presence very much. But it is very different from the female disciples. Every time they pass by, they will unravel a gentle smile accompanied by their blushing faces. But none of that was cared about by Ryuma, although he blushed a little when the girls looked at him with their faces flushed. Not wanting to waste any more time, Ryuma eventually walked into the academy. When he stepped into the academy area, he was so amazed again when he saw how large the area in the academy was. With various large buildings, the view of the park is very beautiful, making Ryuma amazed at all the scenery he was seeing. At this time he decided to travel around the academy because he was currently looking for something. That is the student council building, in order to submit a documents about informations of himself. But after spending several minutes wandering around non-stop, Ryuma couldn't find what he was looking for. But all that did not make him desperate. In the end, Ryuma walked around the academy area again in order to find the student council building he was looking for. But after a while back around, Ryuma swallowed the bitter pill again because he also couldn't find the building he was looking for. Now he feels a little annoyed. After searching for so long, he still hasn't found what he is looking for. In the end, Ryuma decides to sit on a bench located near the academy park. He sat back and relaxed, looking at the students of the academy passing by on the main street of the academy. But none of them intended to help him because most of them were male students. For the female students had come a long time ago, along with his came. But Ryuma doesn't mind if no one will help him because he will find the building himself, no matter how long it will be spent. Ryuma looked at every building that stood around the academy, which turned out to be located not so far from each other. But when he looked back, he could see that there was a building that carried the theme of classical Europe. Although the building looks a little old, but all that cannot hide the beauty of the surrounding nature. Surrounded by quite lush trees, the building is able to exude its own beauty for people who see it. The building is also located in the corner of the academy, which is certainly quite far from the other buildings. Ryuma couldn't help but let out a deep sigh when he saw all that, knowing that he couldn't linger to enjoy all the scenery because he now also had a business to deal with. But when Ryuma had stood up from his seat and was about to resume his steps, he was suddenly surprised when he heard the sound of footsteps approaching him. A senpai need help. Ryuma could hear someone's voice from beside him. He slowly turned his head towards the source of the sound, and how surprised he was after seeing the figure who had spoken to him. A senpai need help. Then Ryuma was surprised when he heard that a voice was speaking to him. He looked back, and how surprised he was when he realized the figure who was talking to him. Ryuma could see that there was a female student standing in front of him. The girl had short white hair, a flat face and a petite body. People who don't know may think that the girl is still in the age range that is still at 12 years old. Oh that, sure. If Miss doesn't mind. Ryuma replied with a slightly soft voice. He was very grateful that there would be someone coming to help him. The girl slowly nodded her head and started walking slowly, leaving Ryuma who was standing sculpting. Follow me, senpai. The girl said in a flat voice, which was able to make Ryuma come back to his senses from his own reverie. Without much further ado, in the end he walked to follow the white-haired girl in front of him. Short time skip. After spending some time on the way, Ryuma and the white-haired girl finally arrived in front of a fairly large building. After seeing the huge building that was now in front of him, Ryuma was very surprised. How did this little girl know her destination? Even before he didn't say anything to the girl, let alone say his purpose. He now has thought that this white-haired girl is not an ordinary student. Maybe this girl has the advantage to read other people's minds. Of course no one knows, apart from the girl herself. Thank you for helping me, miss. Ryuma thanked the white-haired girl for driving him to the student council building, which he had been looking for. Well, the girl only gave a low nod before finally walking away, leaving Ryuma alone. Now what should I do? Ryuma said softly as he stared at the building that had stood before him very firmly. All the documents he has brought, now just waiting for action from him. The problem now, he didn't see a single person passing by around the student council building. The building was very quiet, as if there was no one inside. "Excuse me, can I help you?" But when Ryuma was immersed in his own thoughts, suddenly there was a voice that made him surprised again. But this time the sound came from the side direction rather than the back direction. Ryuma then turned to the source of the sound and found that there were two people that he didn't know. The two people were standing with a flat look on their faces and a piercing look in their eyes. The two people were female students, one of whom had short black hair, wearing red glasses. The girl was looking right at Ryuma with her piercing gaze. Changing to the person beside the previous female disciple, that person is also a female disciple. Having almost the same characteristics as the previous girl, the girl has black hair, but long down. Also wearing blue glasses, it also appears that the girl is looking at Ryuma with her sharp gaze. Realizing that the two people in front of him are questioning about himself, Ryuma finally decides to introduce himself. Maybe these two girls can later help him. I am looking for the administrators of the student council organization of this academy. My name is Yadamichi Ryuma, I am a new student at this academy. Ryuma introduced himself while slightly bowing his body towards the two girls in front of him. Well, the two girls were a little surprised when they heard that the young man in front of the two of them claimed to be a new student. "Oh, then, please come in, the two of us will take care of all the documents that belong to you." The short-haired girl then said with her voice slightly softened, accompanied by a low nod by the long-haired girl next to her. In the end, the two girls told Ryuma to enter the building in order to complete all the documents needed so that he could become an official student at Kuo Academy. "Yadamichi Ryuma, you are in class 2B. Would you like to ask for help in order to find your new class?" The girl offers help to Ryuma to be able to find his new class without getting lost. But the offer from the girl is gently rejected by Ryuma, who reasoned that he wanted to get to know more about his new academy environment. "Well, if you find any significant problems, just report it to me. My name is Sona Shitori, the president of the student council organization of this academy." The girl introduced herself with her gentle smile, which made Ryuma a little amazed. Although the girl looks a little tough, who would have thought that the girl has such a soft side? "We will help you with all of our might, so don't hesitate to tell us the grievances you are experiencing. My name is Tsubaki Shinra, I am the vice president of the student council organization." This time it was the turn of the girl with long black hair to introduce herself. It seemed that the girl was also unraveling her sweet smile towards him. Ryuma reciprocates all the hospitality from the two girls with his gentle smile, a smile he rarely shown to this world. After making sure that nothing was missed, Ryuma finally decided to say goodbye in order to find his new class. But by the time the door of the room had been completely closed, the two girls suddenly cast sharp gazes at the door that had been completely closed tightly. "Tsubaki, do you feel it too?" Sona asked her best friend in her slightly cold voice, with her gaze also sharp. When she first met Ryuma, she felt a strange aura inside Ryuma's body. "I feel it too, Kaichu. It seems that we will be a little troublesome this time." Tsubaki replied with her flat voice, but her gaze was still the same, which was very sharp. She also felt that there was something strange inside Ryuma, even though she didn't know what it was. But certainly, it was something so big that no one could have imagined. Short time skip. Ryuma is currently standing alone at the door of class 2B, which is his new class. While sensei is preparing for his upcoming introduction, Ryuma is currently preparing mentally. "Please come in." After a while of waiting, Ryuma finally heard a voice from inside the classroom, telling him to go inside. With one long sigh, he finally began to walk into his new classroom. The first thing he saw was Sensei, who was standing while smiling at him. The sensei was a beautiful young woman, beautiful enough to rival the academy's female students. "Introduce, my name is Yadamichi Ryuma. I come from the city, I hope we can all be good friends." Ryuma introduced himself while bowing his body towards the students in front of him. Then a brief introduction from Ryuma was able to make the female students scream hysterically, while the male students were staring at him with a sharp gaze. Of course Ryuma could feel the hostile gazes of the male disciples, which made him surprised and astonished. He had just come to this academy, had he made enmity as well? After asking his new friends about himself, Ryuma was finally invited to sit down. The seat that will be occupied by him is at the back end and right next to the window. The same fate as all main characters in general, just kidding. In front of the chair occupied by Ryuma is a chair belonging to one of the male students in his class. The young man has characteristic brown hair with a sharp gaze. But the sharp gaze of the young man, not at all, was on him, but on the girls. Of course, the behavior of the young man in front of him made Ryuma a little surprised. When all the male students were hostile to him, this brown-haired young man didn't seem to be. The first rest bell just rang, which signaled that it was time for the first break. All the students quickly walked out of their classrooms in order to rest themselves or play with their friends. The same is true for Ryuma, who is currently walking alone around the vast academy area. He intends to do this in order to get to know more about his new environment. Moreover, he is a new student who certainly does not recognize the environment around him at all. Ryuma is currently standing in a grassland, which is on the edge of the academy's main park. From here, he could see almost all areas of the academy, considering that this grassland had a towering surface upwards, slightly higher than the other areas. Ryuma sat leaning against a fairly large tree with lush leaves. He decided to rest here, considering that the leaves of this tree are quite shady, able to block the sun's rays that are so very strong. But when Ryuma was complacent about the calm he felt, he was suddenly shocked after hearing someone's voice that sounded faintly. Not a person, but more than one. He turned his head around in order to find the source of the sound. And after a while of searching, he was able to find the origin of the mysterious sound. In the grassland that had a descending surface, he could see 3 young men lying down. It also appears that the 3 young men is looking at the blue sky that is so very beautiful, which makes Ryuma speculate that they are looking for tranquility, just like him at this time. I want to touch the chests of girls all over this academy. But when Ryuma was about to close his eyes, again, he was suddenly startled again by the voice he had previously heard. He then turned his head sideways, more precisely towards the 3 foreign young men who were currently seen sitting while staring at each other. He don't know what the 3 young men were talking about, but obviously, every time a female student happened to pass by the 3 of them, the girls gave them sharp eyes, which indicated that the girls did not like what the 3 of them were talking about. New environment, of course there will be new things too. Ryuma said in his low voice, while continuing to look at the 3 young men who were still chatting with each other. Although he also felt that he had to make friends immediately, but for some reason he felt much calmer when he was alone. It felt much better than hanging out with other students. He don't know where all those feelings came from, but certainly, they have been deeply ingrained in Ryuma. He don't know when, how could it happen? He didn't know at all. After thinking about it, it is indeed important to have friends, at least one person. Besides being able to help him at a certain time, getting a friend will certainly make life more colorful. At this very moment, Ryuma has committed, he will find friends for himself, but not for now. He now feels better alone. When he is alone, he feels much closer to nature, even closer to the creator itself. It is true that solitude is the best friend of everyone in this world, and he is no exception. Afternoon is approaching, where the sky that previously looked bright blue, now slowly begins to change color to reddish orange. White clouds stretched all over the sky, slightly holding back the sunlight that was not too hot. The sky looks very beautiful, just like above the sky there is a beauty of heaven that is second to none. One by one the houses also began to turn on the lights of their respective houses before it was getting late at night. The streets of Kuo City also look less crowded, which adds to the beauty of the afternoon atmosphere. On a pedestrian bridge, 2 young men can be seen stepping on their feet. The 2 young men were also seen wearing school uniforms, indicating that the 2 young men were still students. One of the young men had brown hair, with 2 pointed hairs sticking out at the back of his head. He is a young man who is famous for his pervertedness throughout Kuo Academy, none other than Issei Haidu. While next to him, there was a spiky black-haired young man who was wearing a flat face. He is a new student at Kuo Academy, who is none other than Yadamichi Ryuma. Ryuma put on a flat face not without a reason, he was tired of hearing his new friends babble. If only his babbling had been beneficial, he would have listened, but all his babbling would not have benefited him. What he raved about was all about the girls' underwear, and also the collection of perverted books he had. All of them didn't even attract the slightest interest from Ryuma, who had just been silent while wearing a straight face. But everything changed when there was an oddity that occurred between the 2 of them, in which someone shouted from behind both of them. Then the 2 also turned their heads to find out what was going on. Wait. In front of the 2, there was a schoolgirl with long black hair, her eyes were purple, and her school uniform was dark red. At first glance, there is nothing unusual about the appearance of the girl in front of the 2 at this time. So is there one of you named Issei Haidu? The girl asked with her face starting to turn red. It was also seen that she was lowering her gaze to the ground while starting to play with her fingers. Ryuma, who was confused, turned to look at Issei and saw that the brown-haired young man was also confused. I'm Issei Haidu. Issei, whose name is Issei Haidu, replied to the question from the foreign girl he had just met. Although he felt a little excited because he saw the girl's big breasts, he still tried to restrain his lust. Thank goodness. I've been waiting for you from earlier. Aye. So I often see you walking over this bridge, and I think you're cool and handsome, and so will you be my boyfriend?" The confession from the girl, it turned out, was able to make Issei very surprised, even Ryuma who heard it. Ryuma didn't expect that there was a girl who liked a perverted young man, but he was also happy that Issei was not so bad in the eyes of others. "Oh. Certainly. I can be your boyfriend." Issei, who was indeed expecting a girlfriend, immediately agreed to be the girlfriend of a girl he had just met. But for Ryuma, he wondered why Issei could without thinking directly agree to be the girlfriend of a girl he had just met, literally, surely Issei didn't know more about the girl. "I'm glad to hear it. In that case, don't mind if we start dating tomorrow?" The girl feels very happy that her love has been accepted by Issei and proposes to Issei for a date the next day. It's really strange, of course, for Ryuma, how could someone who had just met each other fall in love so much? "So sure. I'll get ready for tomorrow." Issei, without thinking anymore, directly agreed to the proposal of the girl who had become his girlfriend. Although he still doesn't know her, he can spend his date tomorrow to get to know more about his new girlfriend. The girl was very happy again after learning that Issei had agreed to her proposal. It seemed that she was smiling with tenderness, but there was something strange about her smile. Ryuma, who had been harboring a bit of suspicion towards the girl, realized that the smile shown by the girl held something else. He didn't know for sure, but he felt that something was hidden behind that girl's smile. The girl turned around and immediately ran away from Issei and Ryuma, but before she disappeared completely, the girl turned and looked gently at Issei. "My name is Amano Yuma. I look forward to the two of us going on a date tomorrow." After saying this, Yuma resumed her run and soon disappeared from Issei and Ryuma's sight. While Issei is rejoicing over the luck that has been saved, Ryuma is currently thinking hard about the meaning of the smile he previously saw in that girl. "You're right, me. The girl is not an ordinary person, she is not a human being in general. You'd better keep an eye on your friend, or not, he'll be gone forever." But when Ryuma was busy in his own thoughts, he was suddenly surprised by a voice that came from nowhere. He turned his head around quickly and only found Issei, who was jumping up and down with excitement beside him. Ryuma was very confused by the sound he had previously heard. He did not see the form of the sound, but he felt that the sound was very close to him. But all he could see was Issei alone. It was also impossible for Issei to say such things to him. What's more, the voice refers to himself as me, which literally, the owner of the voice claims that he too is himself. There are only two conclusions for Ryuma at this time, either it was just a hallucination, or indeed the sound really happened to him. "Issei. Did you hear the sound before?" Ryuma, who didn't want to mess around with his own thoughts, asked Issei about the voice he had previously heard. He was sure that if the voice had come from very close to him, Issei would have heard it too. "No. What sound do you mean? Is it because of jealousy that you hallucinated getting a confession from a girl?" It turns out that Issei didn't hear the voice that he had just heard and instead said he was hallucinating to get a confession from a girl. Ryuma wants to beat Issei right now, but considering that Issei is his new friend, he again discourages it. "Whatever you say, we'd better go home soon. I have so many things to do at home." Ryuma, who realized that he was upset with the behavior of his new friend, first stepped on his feet. However, Issei quickly caught up with him and began to resume his previously stalled babbling. Ryuma ignored the babble of Issei next to him. He was currently thinking hard about the voice he had previously heard. The voice warns that Yuma is not a human and warns to keep an eye on Issei if he does not want to lose him forever. These various clues Ryuma slowly understood their meaning, which managed to become a conclusion. He can conclude that Yuma is not a human, but another creature. And the warning to keep an eye on Issei, probably intending to keep an eye on Issei went together with Yuma. All of that leads to a date that Issei will have together with Yuma tomorrow. Inevitably, tomorrow he decides to go along. Not only to help Issei if things get worse, but he can also find out Yuma's true identity, which is said to be not an ordinary girl. A stretch of darkness is visible as long as the eye sees, without anything else but that. Hovering above the void, there appeared to be a young man with pointed black hair who looked confused. He is Yadamichi Ryuma, who had previously fallen asleep very deeply, but after waking up, he was confused about the place where he is now. All he could see was darkness and emptiness, extremely quiet, and felt very confused and frightened because this experience was the first for him. What's more, what he saw was endless darkness. He was worried that something was hiding behind it. "Welcome, I'm sorry that I can't welcome you." The person's voice suddenly echoed throughout the darkness, and from behind the darkness of the void, there appeared to be a human walking towards Ryuma. At first Ryuma felt very scared when he first saw the figure, but as the figure got closer to him, slowly his fear began to disappear. "You must be wondering where you are now, and more importantly, who I really am, right?" The figure had now stood not far in front of him, and from above, a light appeared that shone right towards the mysterious figure's body. Ryuma, who saw the real figure, felt very surprised at his appearance, not because it was terrible or anything like that, but the figure had a very, very similar appearance to him. This is the Void Realm, the abyss of death, which, in turn, becomes the sealing place of cursed creatures that have the potential to destroy the world. The figure explains where Ryuma is currently located, and at the end of his speech, the darkness that previously enveloped all directions suddenly turned into a scene of stars and galaxies that looked very beautiful. Ryuma was so amazed by the sight that at first, he thought that this place was hiding something terrible, but who would have thought it would be so beautiful like this? Introduce, I am Azrallik, the angel of gods, and the longest being who lived in here. The figure introduced himself as the angel of God's messenger named Azrallik. Along with his speech, suddenly 12 golden wings appeared on his back. You must be asking why I can look like you, well because I am you, and you are me. The figure explains why he can have the same appearance as Ryuma, that he is actually Ryuma, and Ryuma is actually him. Very confusing, right? But that explanation is not over yet. That said, I am the real one, and you live in the world using only my imagination. The figure smiled softly while continuing to explain the strange phenomenon. Meanwhile, Ryuma could only fall silent as he realized the truth of the shake. And now, I will take everything that has been mine. Come back to your reality. But with all of a sudden, the sight of these beautiful stars and galaxies turned into endless darkness again. Everything was pitch black, and the light that had previously shone on the figure has now disappeared. The 12 golden wings on the back of the figure have also turned into a deep black color. With that, Ryuma's body instantly knelt down, without being able to do anything else. I am was you, and you was me. It is time to cleanse my name of all the stains of evil. The figure slowly approached Ryuma's body with his 12 black wings that had been spread. He lifted Ryuma's face up to face his face, and with his right hand touching Ryuma's chest. I, Azrallik, will return to the world to uphold the fallen pillar of justice. The golden light instantly shone, illuminating all directions, which was dark before, now full of golden light. At the same time, the body of the figure shattered into golden grains of light and entered Ryuma's body directly through the chest. Now the archangel has been released from his prison again after thousands of years of confinement. With his freedom this time, he will try to atone for all his sins that he had committed against heaven, which made him fall into the abyss of curse and torment. Night was approaching, darkening part of the earth's surface to pitch black and indicating that the harsh day was finally over. But such a thing does not seem to apply to two young boy and young girl who are around the Kuo City Park area. They both decided to take a break after a full day of dating. They are Issei and Yuma, who just finished their first date. They have now decided to rest near a fountain in Kuo City Park. Nah, Issei. Don't you mind doing some things for me? Yuma, who from the beginning seemed to be hiding something, seemed to be starting to carry out her plan. By pretending to be an innocent girl, of course, Yuma will very easily deceive and trick ordinary people in general. Anything. In fact, the acting went very smoothly against Issei. The perverted young man didn't have the slightest suspicion of Yuma, who was actually planning something for him. Hearing this made Yuma unravel the smile on her face, and as a result, the smile managed to make her beauty even more, according to Issei. But actually, the smile contains a very, very unexpected meaning. Then, die for me. Yuma, who previously had the face of an innocent teenage girl, has now turned into a woman aged 20 years and over who has a sharp gaze. Instantly the clothes she was wearing were torn, revealing all parts of her naked body. This incident, in fact, did not make Issei frightened or anything like that. In fact, he felt very excited when he saw Yuma's naked body. Didn't know what's on his mind, but it's too late, Yuma has entered the final part of her plan. Yuma's naked body was instantly wrapped in forest cloths that appeared out of nowhere, and on the back of her back, 2 pairs of black wings appeared. From her right hand, a purplish light spear emerged. Issei immediately fell to his feet when he saw the perfect change from Yuma, who originally looked like an innocent teenage girl, has now turned into a woman aged 20 years and above, and even more surprising, the appearance of a pair of jet black wings on her back. Playing a date game with you feels very exciting, Issei-kun. The woman smiled very broadly when she saw Issei, who was scared to death. Yuma, from the beginning, was actually not an ordinary human, but a supernatural being who had more power than ordinary humans in general. She went on a date with Issei, certainly not for fun, of course, there was something inside Issei which required one of the creatures to plan something bad for Issei. Now that everything is too late, there is no retreat for Issei, seeing that Yuma is carrying a spear, making him think that the girl will kill him soon. At first he couldn't believe the terrible events that happened to him, however, this was a reality. Yuma is not an innocent teenage girl in general, but a terrible creature. Die. Without waiting any longer, Yuma immediately threw her light spear right towards Issei's neck. The spear shot out very quickly, without being able to be followed by Issei's vision. But before the spear stuck right into Issei's head, suddenly the spear of light stopped completely. Yuma was immediately surprised, she didn't expect that something like this would happen. Apparently, the spear was caught by a young man who suddenly came out of nowhere. He came just right in time. If he was late for just a second, it was certain that Issei would die with a spear stuck right in his neck. Yuma, who saw it, was very surprised. Moreover, the young man stopped her spear with only his bare hands, without the slightest magic visible. No injuries were received by the young man, on the contrary, this time it seemed that the light spear had received damage. From the young man's hand, a billowing and creeping black mist appeared to envelop the blade of Yuma's light spear, until finally the entire spear had been completely enveloped by the black mist. With just a blink of an eye, the black mist suddenly disappeared along with Yuma's spear of light, leaving nothing left of the spear. What? Yuma instantly bulged her eyes very widely when she realized that her spear had disappeared into nothingness. But what was more shocking than it all was the black mist released by the mysterious young man, only this time she saw such a mysterious power. Subconsciously, Yuma also took a few steps back and extended the distance from the mysterious young man. Meanwhile, Issei, who had been rescued, suddenly fell on the ground with a thick black mist covering all parts of his body. I want to bring this young man back. The mysterious figure shook off his hand which was shrouded in black mist before finally staring at Yuma with his extremely flat gaze. Yuma was stunned for a moment after seeing the incident, thinking whether she should run away or fight the mysterious young man. To escape, she was confident to do so, but in order to resist, she felt a little hesitant, even more so after seeing his strange power. Needing no answer from Yuma, the mysterious young man suddenly turned around and knelt beside Issei's body that was lying on the ground. It can be seen that the young man is touching Issei's chest, regardless of Yuma's presence behind him. Hey. What do you think you are doing? Annoyed and angry because she felt that her presence was ignored by the young man, Yuma quickly threw another spear of light. Now the target is not Issei, but the figure of the mysterious young man who appeared out of nowhere. The spear shot out very quickly, piercing the air and creating a purple trail of light behind it. However, when the spear was about to hit the young man's back, the strangeness was repeated. The spear immediately stopped completely, even though there was no magic around the mysterious young man's body. At first there was nothing unusual about the spear, which seemed to be just stopped in the air. However, the spear began to show strangeness when the young man began to rise and stand. Her light spear suddenly seemed to be forced to lengthen and continued to extend until in the end it was forced to shrink and immediately disappeared out of thin air. Yuma was shocked when she saw the strangeness. She was currently feeling scared and panicked until the mysterious young man decided to attack her right now. The young man was seen standing with his back to her, his black robe blazing in the wind. Black mist slowly began to appear around the young man's body, which made the atmosphere of the surrounding area feel very tense. At last, you fallen angels. Unexpectedly, the mysterious young man turned his body and glared his eyes right at Yuma. As a result, this action managed to make Yuma very scared and immediately flew away at full speed. Yuma felt very scared not without reason, she felt very scared when she saw the two eyes of the figure. Both eyes shone deep red and from within them, she could see the endless darkness. Moreover, the strong aura radiance from within the young man's body further strengthened her to immediately escape. The pitch-black aura instantly spread in all directions very quickly and was able to blow away anything in its path. The moon, which had previously shone very brightly in the night sky, had now disappeared, covered by the darkness of densely colored clouds that out of nowhere suddenly appeared. From a distance, there appears to be a winged human figure who is seen flying away very quickly, accompanied by various black feathers falling on each figure flapping its wings. The black feathers fell around the garden area, all the black feathers falling from Yuma's pair of black wings. The young man stared flatly at each of the black feathers before finally deciding to catch one of them. He looked at the black feather carefully before finally squeezing it with his right hand and turning it into a void. At the same time, he felt the presence of someone from behind him, whoever it was, who was certainly not an ordinary human being. I'm sorry, but I intend to take him. The figure who just arrived is a girl who has long blood red hair, her long blood red hair looks fluttering in the wind domineeringly. Miss Gremory, I entrusted him to you. He has a great power in his body, I hope you can make good use of him properly. The young man did not face the figure of the red-haired girl at all, but only glanced at her slightly, just to confirm that she was a harmless girl. The red-haired girl was immediately shocked when she saw the eyes of the mysterious young man, even if it was only a glance, she could still feel the horror emitted by the red eyes of that young man. I'm sorry, but this is my family's territory, creatures that have no importance to my family are forbidden to cross this area arbitrarily. The girl warns the young man that this area is her family's territory and only creatures who had importance with her family can pass through this area. although she felt that the young man was much stronger than her, but this was her territory, the territory of the underworld devil nobleman's Gremory family. I see, Miss Gremory. If you don't mind, I intend to stay in your family's territorial area for some time. The young man actually understood that this place and almost the entire area of Kuo City belonged to the Gremory Yang family. In fact, this was the enemy's territorial territory. But even so, this city is also the only place where he feels comfortable. I can't let other creatures create some messing on this city. The girl still felt unsure about letting the young man stay in her territory. Not only was the identity of the young man unknown, she was worried that the young man was harboring something evil in her territory. Don't worry, Miss Gremory. I will do nothing that could disturb your existence or the city. The young man retorted with his voice softened slightly, but the young man still stood with his back to her and only allowed herself to catch a glimpse of part of his face covered by a black robe. What's the guarantee that you won't harass me and my family? The girl still does not believe the words of the mysterious young man. Her territory has now been hit by serious problems, whose territory has been successfully breached by some fallen angels. She does not want to add to the problem by presenting one more creature of unknown type. How could I possibly do that kind of thing, whereas you are the successor of the Gremory family, which, being such a powerful devil noble family. I've been around here too for all this time, but what? Nothing happened, right? In fact, I am currently the one who saved the dragon. The young man explained that he had actually been in Kuo City for quite a while, which immediately surprised the red-haired girl. So all this time this unknown creature has been living in her territory without her knowledge, but she also feels a little relieved that it turns out that the young man did not attack her family's territory at all before. Alright, but what do you mean by dragon? In the end, the girl agreed to the young man's request and allowed him to stay on her territory for some time. But afterwards, she just realized that the young man had previously said that he had saved the dragon. What did he mean? Hearing this, the mysterious young man then turned his eyes back to the red-haired girl who was confused. He began to walk away from the garden area while taking off the robe he was wearing. Someday you will find out for yourself, Miss Gremory. Thus, please allow me to say goodbye. The young man suddenly stopped his steps and slowed his right hand slightly to the red-haired girl who was behind him. After that, he removed the black robe he was wearing and revealed a pair of jet black angel wings that had suddenly appeared on his back. With a blink of an eye, the young man shot up the sky and flew through the dark night sky. As the young man left her, the moon that was originally covered by dark clouds now began to appear and the atmosphere that previously felt very tense now began to feel like before. From above the sky, the red-haired girl could see the pitch-black feathers that were falling from the air previously passed by the mysterious young man. She felt very surprised and did not expect that the young man was actually one of the fallen angels, but even so, the young man had promised not to disturb her territory and most importantly, he had saved a figure who would be very useful for her later. Either she should feel grateful to him or even more wary of him because he is a fallen angel who could pose a threat to her and her family one day. Tied. 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 The alarm sounded in a room that was not big enough or small. But it didn't take long, the alarm stopped instantly when a hand suddenly appeared and turned it off. Home. Ryuma finally woke up. After yesterday night he did something that was quite draining for her. For a long time he sat on his bed before deciding to go downstairs and get ready to go to the academy. Kuo City Street now looks crowded, dominated by students who walk to get to their respective schools. Most of them walk together with their friends, but that doesn't apply to Ryuma at all. As usual, Ryuma always walks alone, without a friend by his side, but it doesn't matter to him. Much more importantly is about the events of yesterday night. He had shown his presence to Ria's Gremory and it was a foolish decision he had taken. Ria's Gremory was also one of Kuo Academy students, just like himself. He was worried that if he met her here, then everything would be exposed and would have a bad impact on himself. Literally, he is now not an ordinary man, but a fallen angel. The fallen angel had long been hostile to the devils, he feared if the great war that had previously occurred would happen again. Ryuma could only let out a deep sigh at the thought of the worst consequences, yet he could do nothing else other than leave everything to time. Unexpectedly, he finally arrived at the gate of Kuo Academy, which was full of other students who had also just arrived or were just relaxing there before starting lessons. Ryuma stepped slowly while continuing to maintain his gaze forward. He didn't want to look at the girls who were looking at him with their loving eyes. As usual, Ryuma would walk straight to his class where he would sit back or read his favorite book while waiting for the lesson to begin. But while he was on his way, the thing he was very afraid of happened, namely he ran into Ria's Gremory, who was walking together with her friend. Ryuma could only smile awkwardly towards Ria's, but to his surprise, the red-haired girl returned her smile with a gentle smile. After that, the two girls resumed their steps and left Ryuma who was standing sculpting like an idiot. He thought that maybe Riaz didn't see him clearly because on that night he was wearing a black robe that almost covered his entire body. Ryuma, who escaped death, certainly felt very relieved. With this he didn't have to bother to correct his mistake. It wasn't for nothing that Ryuma felt quite panicked if Riaz recognized herself as a fallen angel, because Kuo City was the demon territory of the noble Gremory family. It is certain that the presence of a creature like him is likely to invite only bad things, which will not only befall it, but will also befall to all mankind. The creature like him is certainly not allowed to wander around arbitrarily in this city, because if it is discovered, then the Gremory family will hunt him down. Not only him, but also all the fallen angels, and he absolutely did not want such a thing to happen. Dismissing all these bad thoughts, Ryuma resumed his activities as usual. Without worry, anxiety, panic and so on, that's what Ryuma wants, a world full of tranquility, peace and no fighting is his biggest dream. But apparently, the tranquility dreamed of by Ryuma didn't seem to happen today. When the rest bell rang, in fact he had a guest who was very unexpected by him. From behind the classroom door, a blonde young man with a very handsome face appeared. Immediately, the female students who were in Ryuma's class screamed hysterically because their class had a very handsome prince. The blonde young man unraveled his gentle smile while walking slowly closer to Ryuma's seat. Ryuma also raised his eyebrows next door because he was quite surprised by the arrival of the handsome young man, who incidentally was also not an ordinary human. "Hi, my name is Kiba. Kiba kindly greets Ryuma, who is confused. Even more so with the female students cheering him, it made him feel even more uncomfortable. "Yo, hello. My name is Yadamichi Ryuma, do you have any needs with me?" Ryuma kindly welcomes Kiba's introduction. But without further ado, Ryuma questioned Kiba's arrival because it is impossible for a devil to visit someone without having a specific purpose. "Ahaha, you're right, Yadamichi-kun, I'm here to invite you to come to the Occult Research Club." Kiba expresses his purpose to Ryuma, which turns out to be an invitation to visit the Occult Research Club. Ryuma, who heard it, instantly realized that his previous speculation was wrong. "Alright, show me the way." Ryuma's attitude instantly changed completely when he heard the invitation from Kiba. The gaze of both of his eyes looked very sharp, with a flat look on his face. Kiba nodded his head slowly and began to walk away from the classroom accompanied by Ryuma, who walked behind him. In every hallway passed by the two, there would be screams from the female students who saw it. Don't know what they think, but obviously, Ryuma doesn't care about it at all. Precisely at this time, he is thinking hard about how to get out of this dangerous situation. He actually didn't matter if Riaz and her pawns intended to fight him, but the problem was, he was afraid that the other factions would also interfere. "TSK. I underestimated her too much." Ryuma sprinkled his tongue while grumbling in his heart, regretting that he had acted so very carelessly. He should have left yesterday directly after saving the dragon, so that this kind of incident would not happen. Short time skip. "We've arrived, Yadamichi-kun." Until finally, Ryuma and Kiba have arrived in front of a building that looks to carry the theme of classic Europe. The building also looks quite old and is in the corner of the academy area. Ryuma slowly nodded his head quietly, which made Kiba instantly open the door of the building. Ryuma slowly goes inside, with Kiba still leading the way. Talk. 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 Before entering the main room, Kiba first knocked on the door. Not waiting long, there was a reply from behind the door, telling the two of them to go inside. Crack. The door was opened, and the first thing Ryuma saw was a classic room with minimal lighting. There were also several girls sitting on a red sofa, and also a brown-haired young man who was also seen sitting on one of the sofas. "Welcome, Yadamichi-kun." The first to greet him was the blood-red-haired girl who was sitting at a wooden seat of hers. It seems that the girl is giving him a gentle smile on her beautiful face. "Thank you, Miss Gremory. But is there anything you want to discuss with me?" Ryuma looked flatly at everyone in the room, including Riaz Gremory, who had previously welcomed his arrival. He couldn't reply warmly like Riaz because basically, he was currently at the enemy's base. "Not much, but before that, sit down first." Riaz immediately told Ryuma to sit down before they began to take a step further into the root of the problem. Ryuma sat on a red sofa right next to the brown-haired young man who had been silent with a look on his face that looked distressed and surprised. "Ryuma, it's great that you can attend this invitation. I invite you to the Occult Research Club to talk about some important things." Just like everyone else did, the first thing Riaz said was a word of gratitude that Ryuma was able to come to the orc building. But that's not what Ryuma wants to hear, he wants to solve his problem immediately and get out from here. "Thank you again, Miss Gremory. Can we get straight to the point?" Riaz smiled softly at the words from Ryuma, who told her to get right into the root of the problem. The red-haired girl also began to stand up from her seat and slowly walked closer to a window. "You should know that this is my family's territorial, right? Ryume said in her cold voice, but such a thing was the same at once had no effect on Ryume. The black-haired young man still maintained a flat face, even though he was being attacked by aura pressure from Ryume and her peerages. I figured it out, Miss Gremory. Ryume retorted with his flat voice, but also sounded full of domineering. Even though he is at the enemy base, Ryume doesn't want to allow himself to look weak. Indeed, at this time he could be defeated quite easily by Ryume and her pawns, but he did not feel pressured or afraid at all. Ryume also turned her body and stared fiercely at Ryume. From within her eyes, Ryume could see that there was a great power that could come out at any time. A wide grin also began to show on her beautiful face, accompanied by the atmosphere of the room that felt more tense. Then surely you also know that creatures like you are absolutely not allowed to set foot on here. Ryume's voice sounded colder and colder, along with a sharper look in her eyes. A deep red aura also began to appear around her body. The girl looked very horrifying, because the girl could have acted very unexpectedly right now. Ryume, who realized that Ryume was trying to corner him, couldn't stay still anymore. He began to get up from his seat and look directly at Ryume with his extremely sharp gaze. If Ryume attacked him, then he would also attack her back. As a result, the actions taken by Ryume made the girls who had previously sat quietly now stood up while staring intently at him. Likewise with Kiba, even the handsome young man was also seen to have pulled out his sword and was ready to attack him. Look, I don't want to wreak havoc on your family's territorial. It's just that, I can't leave this city either. Ryume tried his best to negotiate with Ryume as he didn't want a futile battle to happen. But apparently, Ryume ignored his words at all. As a result, there was no other choice for Ryume, he also began to unleash his power. Around his body, suddenly there was a thick black mist that enveloped his body. The atmosphere of the room also instantly became more tense because battles could occur. Ryume stared at Ryume and her peerage with his piercing gaze, but actually in his mind, he was trying to find a way out of all this without a battle. Enough. But unexpectedly, Ryume suddenly dispelled her devilish aura and also told her peerages to stop. The sharp look in her eyes also changed instantly and replaced by a beautiful gentle smile. Ryume also felt very surprised at Ryume's change in attitude before the girl almost attacked him, but now, everything has changed. The black-haired young man also immediately retracted his power and looked at Ryume with a puzzled look. I'm sorry, but I won't attack the creatures that have saved my precious family members. Ryume smiled softly at Ryume and pointed at the brown-haired young man who had been silent with fear. Ryume finally realizes that the brown-haired young man is the young man he saved last night. Unexpectedly by him, if the young man would become a member of Ryume Gremory's family, with the presence of the young man, it would further strengthen Ryume Gremory and all her pieces, because basically, the young man was storing the mighty dragon power in his own body. So, what does Miss Gremory want from me? In a room that looks vague because the lighting is only sourced from a few candles placed in the corner of the room, there are several people who are sitting like they are talking about something important. Most of these people are women, while there are only 3 men. They were Kiba, Issei and Ryume who were invited by Ryume to come visit the Occult Research Club building to talk about some important things. Ryume certainly called Ryume to come, not just to mess around, she decided to invite the black-haired young man to discuss the strange events that had recently happened. Of course, Ryume was also aware of something like this will happening to him because he had been careless to show his existence right in front of Ryume Gremory as he tried to save Issei from death. Ryume and her peerages would not be a significant problem for him, but rather, the effect of his presence within her family's territorial was the problem. Moreover, now that he had been caught off guard. Such a violation would certainly have a devastating effect on this world because it is likely to recreate a devastating war that took place thousands of years ago. A fallen angel who lives in the territory of a noble devilish family would indeed be an act that could trigger the war to repeat itself. Now, Ryume is sitting on a red sofa with Issei and Kiba beside him. In front of him was a beautiful girl with long dark black hair with an orange rope tied to tie her long hair into a ponytail. Next to the girl's figure is a small white-haired girl with a white cat face hair ornament. Ryume immediately realizes that the girl is the girl who seemed to have helped him before. It's really surprising, it turns out that the person who once helped him was one of the peerage of the heir of the Gremory family. Thinking about it again already made him feel quite surprised. It turns out that the heir of the Gremory family is really very awesome. Ryume unraveled a faint smile on his straight face while staring at Ryume with his blank gaze. I think you already know everything now, right Yadamichi Ryume-kun? Ryume asked in her soft-sounding voice, staring at Ryume with her gaze full of interest. It's true, Miss Gremory. Ryume replied briefly, with his voice still sounding flat. There's no need to be so formal with me, Yadamichi-kun. My name is Ryume Gremory, I am the heir of the Gremory family and also the younger sister of the great Mau, Surzich Lucifer. Ryuz said with his original nature, arrogant and full of pride, but still, all these traits made him look more and more authoritative. I know about it, Ryuma replied briefly, with his voice still sounding flat. The look on his face seemed to be completely blank, without the slightest expression there. Even so, you can call me Ryuz. I give you an honor to be able to call my name directly. Ryuz continued, with a big grin on her face, while pointing right at Ryuma's face. But none of that made Ryuma react in the slightest. The black-haired young man was still silent with his face looking flat, staring at Ryuz with his two black eyes. The atmosphere felt very quiet. Ryuma did not reply to Ryuz's words at all, and vice versa. Meanwhile, Issei is seen sitting silently with his gaze down. It can be concluded that the young man is depressed and feels confused about what happened to him and also to the people around him. How can he not feel confused? When some beautiful girl declares herself to be a devil, of course, he, as an ordinary person, will not be able to believe it. Not only that, it seems that his own friend, Yadamichi Ryuma, is also not an ordinary person. He is very sure of it. He began to reveal his face again and looked at Ryuma next to him with his eyes faintly visible. Ryuma, aren't you a human either? Issei asked with his voice faintly, looking at Ryuma with his eyes that seemed blank and faint. A low nod of head from Ryuma was a simple reply to Issei's question, which instantly made the brown-haired young man bow his face down again. Really, he couldn't bear to be here at all. Everything seemed to be pressing on him. This Grimoire. It seems that you have to explain to your pawn first. Ryuma said briefly, while looking flatly at Issei who was beside him. Alright Issei, you have now become a devil, and you are now officially part of the Grimoire noble family. Ryuz said clearly, explaining to Issei that he wasn't an ordinary human anymore. At the same time as the end of her speech, the red-haired girl suddenly stood up from her seat, followed by her friends. They all stared at Issei who was confused, before finally uncovering the great secret they had been hiding from mankind. All of a sudden, a pair of bat wings appeared behind Ryu's back, as well as her friends' backs. And unexpectedly, Issei felt something strange on his back, then a second later, the same pair of bat wings as Ryu's and her friends appeared on his back. What? Issei shouted hysterically when he saw a pair of devil's wings on his back. Issei, the long-haired girl with deep black, the little white-haired girl, Kiba, and also Ryuz, had revealed a pair of bat wings on their respective backs, leaving only Ryuma still sitting on the red sofa, while continuing to wear a flat look on his face. Can you see, Issei? You are now a devil, exactly one of the peerages I have. From now on, you must call me Butchu. Obviously Ryuz, with a gentle smile on her pretty face, looked at Issei with her gentle gaze. Issei couldn't say a word at all. He looked still confused about what had happened to him. But all these wonderful changes are a form of a miracle that will not be able to be obtained by everyone in this world. Should he be grateful, right? But all of a sudden, Ryuma got up from his seat and stood right in front of Ryuz and her pieces, while showing an expression that Ryuz and her pawns had never expected. It could be seen that there was a gentle smile formed on Ryuma's handsome face, which for some reason could appear. I'm sorry for all the unpleasant actions I just did to you. I just want to make sure y'all were really not a threat. Ryuma said, whose voice had now softened, revealing a big smile on his face. What does it mean? Ryuz asked in confusion, only this time she was confused by a creature that was not from the same devil race as her. Yes, I'm just testing you. Ryuma replied with a small giggle as he saw the confused faces of Ryuz as well as her pieces. With her face twitching, Ryuz did her best not to beat up the young man in front of her. It was really annoying. How could she be played with by a young man she had even just knew, while she was a respectable devil from the nobility? However, seeing that Ryuma had not shown his cold side to her, made her feel even more calm and relieved. Introduce, I am Yadamichi Ryuma. An ordinary human being as well as a fallen angel. I hope we can be friends even if our faction is separated. Ryuma said while showing a friendly smile on his face, introducing himself even though Ryuz and her pawns already knew who he was. It's nice to get acquainted with you, Yadamichi Ryuma. Although our factions contradict each other, they are not a barrier to our bond of friendship. Reply Ryuz is no less friendly than Ryuma. The beautiful red-haired girl is also seen showing a gentle smile on her beautiful face. Then, Ryuz started turning her head and staring at her pieces, which instantly made her pieces nod their heads slowly. One of the pieces, a girl with long dark black hair, suddenly stood up from her seat and looked at Ryuma's face with her beautiful eyes. Introduce, Yadamichi-kun. My name is Akeno Himejima. I hope we can be good friends, or maybe, go further than just the word friendship. Akeno said kindly, smiling softly at Ryuma, which basically, her smile also has other meanings than just a gentle smile. Akeno-san. I hope so too, may God always bless you. Ryuma replied kindly, which immediately made Ryuz and her pawns groan in pain. As a result, Ryuma was immediately shocked and felt guilty, because he unknowingly mentioned the holy word God around Ryuz and his pawns who incidentally were devils. Such holy words would hurt them greatly, as would all the devil races in the underworld. Ah, sorry for my carelessness, I'm used to giving a sacred words to people who talk to me. Ryuma said awkwardly, while scratching the back of his head that was not itchy. No, it's okay. A creature like yourself is indeed used to saying sacred words, Riaz replied softly, forgiving Ryuma's carelessness because basically, the young man was previously one of the holy beings devoted to God. Hey, man. If you are neither a devil nor a human, then what kind of creature are you? Issei asked spontaneously, looking at Ryuma with both eyes indicating his immense curiosity. I am a fallen angel, a being who was previously a holy being, yet I am cast out of the splendor and beauty of heaven for all the sins I have committed. In a way, I am a sinner. Ryuma replied with his voice that sounded soft, in every word he said, it sounded trembling, as if there was a sadness in itself when he said those words. Sorry, I don't know at all. Issei said while smiling awkwardly at Ryuma, apologizing for his curiosity which ended up reminding Ryuma of all the sins he had committed. But even so, I don't deny the God who created me at all. Even though I am a sinner, I still acknowledge that God is the only one I have the right to worship. Ryuma said softly, his gaze seemed to be downcast, making Riaz and her pawns feel worried about him. I have committed a great sin that will be unforgivable, and I doubt if I can forgive the sin I have committed myself. I have long lost my way, that great sin has always haunted me, and also that sin has made me an unholy being. A cursed rebel, and a creature who has broken every prayer and hope of mankind. Ryuma continued, it didn't feel if both of his eyes began to shed tears that looked so very clear. But even so, I really hope, very, very much hope that I can correct the sins that I have committed. I wanted to go back to where I came from, I wanted to go back to dedicate myself to the Creator, but I realized that I didn't have the right to do that. Ryuma continued with sobs that sounded so very heart-wrenching, as if the young man was regretting what he had done. But I'm sure I'll be able to go back to where I came from, and go back to repairing what he destroyed, what he had taken away from me, what he had banished to me. Although they have all rejected me, I will prove to them that I am not an unholy rebel and traitor, I will assure you, they will again recognize me as one of them, a holy being who worships the one and only God of hosts, who has created all beings with his infinite mercy. Ryuma asserted with full of confidence and burning enthusiasm in his heart, making Riaz and his pawns unravel a gentle smile on all of their faces again. The smile full of enthusiasm suddenly appeared and replaced Ryuma's sad face that had previously adorned his handsome face. He was determined, since he fell from all the glory he got, he was determined that he would return. Back to heaven, return to being a devotee of God who always prays every human prayer that asks for mercy to him. His heart began to pound, his heart began to tremble violently, making Ryuma's eyes instantly widen, because he knew exactly what the meaning of everything he was currently feeling. Unstoppable, tears began to flow out of his eyes again, making Riaz and her peerage worry about him again. But basically, there was nothing they should worry about Ryuma, because he was crying, not because he remembered a bad memory or was feeling something bad, but he was feeling something that he had been longing for, also that he had always hoped for between his deep regret and sadness. Days passed, all lived by Yadamichi Ryuma smoothly, without any interference from other parties, except from Ria's pieces, including the red-haired girl herself. These days, he was often invited to come to the Occult Research Club building to talk about some matters regarding spiritual factions. Even so, Ryuma didn't feel bothered at all about the invitations from Rias that were given to him every day, as long as it wasn't a conflict that could undo the peace of the three factions, he didn't mind it at all. Also, Issei had slowly begun to accept the fact that as a devil, he began to be able to carry out the daily duties as a devil peerage. Today, just like the previous days, Ryuma is sitting on his bench staring at the view outside the window right beside him. Calm and peaceful, it was only this time that he could see this kind of scene, a scene he had always dreamed of, where all creatures did not need to fight with the aim of eliminating each other. Because he is an archangel who was first created by God, Ryuma has gained a lot of experience, memories of battles that are completely endless. Fallen angels and devils, none of these two races he has never killed with his own two hands. As an archangel, it is his duty to always protect the throne of heaven from the hands of destroyers. For centuries, thousands of years, until countless times, he has joined various battles, some even to the point of making him completely unable to forget the war. To be precise, when the great war between the three previous factions, involving the angels, fallen angels and devils factions, a great battle that also marked his downfall. Ryuma's eyes filled with tears when he saw how cruel the great battle was, to be able to make an archangel cry, surely the battle had at least left a deep wound in his heart. But then, he quickly blinked his eyes for several times, while trying not to remember the very heartbreaking incident. It is enough that he regrets in despair, it is enough that he curses himself for all the deeds he has done himself. Now, Ryuma has no intention of repeating the same thing, he will correct all his mistakes, only then will he be free from this endless nightmare. Hey, Yadamichi-kun seems to be gloomy, aren't we going to comfort him? One of the girls whispered to her friend when she saw Ryuma, who was wearing a gloomy look. I think the same thing as you, however, it doesn't seem like he needs our presence. It seems that he wants to be alone. The other girl replied disappointedly as she realized that Ryuma didn't seem to want to be disturbed at all. The two girls couldn't help but let out a deep sigh, disappointed that they both had absolutely no chance to get close to Ryuma, a handsome young man of Kuo Academy, who was even able to rival the good looks of Kibayudo. Of course, a handsome young man will be treated very differently by girls, plus that Ryuma's nature is not perverted at all, really being a dream young man of female students. The day changed again, but still with the same activity. Ryuma is currently seen walking with Issei beside him. Coincidentally this morning, Issei walked on the same road used by Ryuma to arrive at Kuo Academy. Hey, man. Do you know that yesterday I just met a nun? I even drove her to the church. Issei said excitedly, telling Ryuma that he had just met a nun yesterday. Really? Isn't the church a forbidden place that even you shouldn't approach? Ryuma asked with a slight chuckle. It seemed like Issei was too ignorant of what Rias had told him. I know about it. But isn't helping someone a good thing? Even though I am a devil, it does not mean that I should not do good. Issei replied softly, looking at Ryuma with a big smile on his face. You're right, we as creatures will remain the same. No matter which faction we belong to, we will always carry out the same orders from the creator. Ryuma said with his voice that sounded low, the look on his face looked gloomy, looking at Issei with his teary eyes. Dude, has something happened to you? Issei asked with concern, he didn't expect that Ryuma's reaction would turn out to be like this. No, I only remember my memories, Ryuma retorted gently, revealing a smile on his handsome face, as if what had just happened to him had never happened at all. Although Issei felt that Ryuma was hiding something from him, he decided not to question Ryuma about it. Of course, the black-haired young man had privacy that absolutely no one else should know. However, he also understands that Ryuma's memory is a painful one, where he was once an angel of heaven, now a fallen angel, is really a bitter memory when we lose our pride and replaced with deep regret and sadness. We received an order from the devil noble to eradicate a stray devil hiding in Kuo City. We will start our hunt later in the evening. Ria said firmly, staring at her pieces with a look on her face that looked very serious. Wow. What is a stray devil, but you? Issei asked puzzledly, questioning what a stray devil was to Ria's grammary. Stray devils are devils who have run away from their masters. They are willing to give up their ties with their masters in order to achieve freedom in this world, where they can do what they want without any shackles that constrain them. Ryuma explained in detail, explaining what a stray devil was to Issei. It turns out that you know too, Ryuma-kun, Ria said in her soft-sounding voice, adorned by a beautiful smile on her face. Of course, Miss Gremory. I have met them countlessly, and I have also counted how many stray devils I have returned to where they belong. Ryuma retorted, this time his voice sounded so cold and flat, the look on his face also looked very flat, without showing the slightest expression on his face. There's no need to be so formal with me, Ryuma-kun. You can call me by my name, Rias. Rias said while smiling softly towards Ryuma. The same goes for you as well, Rias. You can call me by my name. Ryuma said kindly, this time the look on his face returned to normal, revealing a gentle smile on his handsome face. Does that also apply to me, Yadamichi-kun? Akeno asked in his distinctive voice, placing her index finger on her left cheek. Sure, Akeno-san. Ryuma replied kindly, allowing Akeno to call him by his name, just like Rias. Thank you, Ryuma-kun, Akeno said with a big smile, licking her lips with her tongue, accompanied by the blush that formed on both of her cheeks. I also invite you to come, Ryuma. I will show you how we, the devil nobles, act in dealing with stray devils. Ria said firmly, revealing a smirk on her face, with her eyes so piercing. Alright, Rias. I will witness it with my own two eyes later. Ryuma replied, agreeing to Ria's invitation to come with her later tonight to see how Rias and her peerage acted in wiping out a stray devils. Brack. The pair of doors made of sturdy iron were thrown a few meters back at high speed. From behind the entrance, 6 humans walked in together. They are none other than Rias with her pieces, namely, Akeno, Kaneko, Issei, Kiba, and one who is not from one of her pieces, but another creature, namely the fallen angel named Ryuma. The 6 of them began to enter a room of the building that looked very dark, with no application except moonlight that tried to squeeze in through the shattered windows. The building in which they stood today was the lair of the stray devils they had been assigned to eradicate, as it had killed countless humans as well as inferior devils. The place is a building that has been abandoned for a long time. It can be seen that the walls of the building have been destroyed a lot, windows have been broken, and there is absolutely no sign of living things inhabiting it, except for a creature that is very different from other creatures. From the moment they first set foot here, they could already feel an extremely evil aura, which was already waiting for them to enter. Issei, stay near me. What you will see is the form of a devil who has betrayed its own master. Ria said coldly, warning Issei to stay near her. As for Issei, he could only nod his head lightly because this was the first time he went directly into the field, especially this time, what he would see was the form of a lowly devil who had the heart to betray its own master. Meanwhile, Ryuma from earlier looks just silent, but both of his eyes seem very sharp, a sign that he is very aware of what is around him. It's here. Kaneko said flatly, pointing to one corner of the room that looked very dark. Hey, I didn't expect you to see me, but it doesn't matter, after you come here, don't expect that you will be able to get out of here again. The woman's extremely cold and intimidating voice could be heard through the room, making anyone who heard it shudder in horror. Especially for Issei, the brown-haired young man looked very scared, his body seemed to tremble, and his eyes were constantly twitching to find the source of the terrible sound. Unlike Issei, Ryuma was not affected by the terrible sound at all, because from earlier, he already knew that there was already a creature who had been waiting for him and Ria's. He can see what no one else can see but himself, no matter if it is a devil, a fallen angel or an angel, no being other than himself has this kind of blessing. In front of him, he could see a silver-haired woman who had a pretty face, however, her body was inversely proportional to her face. The upper part of the woman is indeed shaped like a woman in general, but the lower part is the body of a spider that is very large, really terrible. The woman? Issei asked in confusion when he saw a silver-haired woman peeking out from behind the wall. She is not an ordinary woman. Ryuma said briefly, looking at the woman with his piercing eyes. What do you mean? Isn't she a beautiful woman? Issei's speech instantly stopped, both eyes bulging, cold sweat pouring out profusely on his body as he saw a scene he had never imagined at all. In front of him now was a woman with a very tall body, without wearing a single thread on her body and revealing a pair of big breasts. Breast? Issei exclaimed so excitedly, jumping up and down with joy because he saw very beautiful scenery for the men. I hope you won't regret what you said, Issei. Ryuma said softly, looking at Issei who was excited with his two eyes that looked so very sharp. But the surname Gremory, I will eradicate you forever, Visor. Ria said coldly, pointing at Visor with authority. Brash. I will make you covered in red blood like the red color of your hair. Visor cursed angrily as he began to squeeze his own breasts. Whoa. It's really amazing. Issei exclaimed excitedly, accompanied by blood that began to come out of both nostrils. But the Ryuma sighed in disbelief after seeing what the stray devil was doing before him. You should indeed be completely abolished. Ria said coldly, staring at Visor with his two sharp eyes and filled with murderous lust. Not long after, on Visor's nipples, a small red magic circle appeared. And at a very high speed, her two nipples suddenly shot a green liquid at Ria's and her pieces. Luckily, none of Ria's pieces were hit, not even Issei, because the young man was being protected by Ryuma. TSHH. The wall instantly melted when exposed to liquid from Visor's nipple, making Issei who saw it feel both shocked and incredulous. As it turns out, it is true that Visor is not an ordinary woman, now he knows that she is an evil devil who can kill him so easily. It looks like you're going to withdraw all your remarks, right Issei-kun? Kiba said while giggling when he saw Issei who was surprised by Visor's true identity. Issei, have you ever played chess? Riaz asked Issei who was sitting on the ground because he was surprised by Visor's attack. I've played it once. Issei replied with his voice sounding slightly trembling, replying to Riaz that he knew very little about the game of chess. We share every different characteristic with each other, just like chess. It's named as the evil piece. Riaz explained while smiling at Issei, explaining to him about the evil piece. Udo. Call Riaz to Kiba, it's time for Visor to be destroyed before the devil further goes far. Okay, but you. Kiba said with his voice that sounded full of obedience, walking slowly towards Visor, while indeed a sword in his right hand. Swash. With just a blink of an eye, Kiba had disappeared from everyone's sight, converging into the void without leaving the slightest trace. After that, Visor suddenly cried out in pain because her legs had been cut off by Kiba's extremely fast sword slash. As a knight, Kiba has a very high speed, with his main weapon in the form of a sword. Riaz explained while watching Kiba who was cutting off Visor's legs. Visor wailed with full of pain, the attack from Kiba was so very fast and precise, without taking long, almost all of Visor's legs had been cut off by him. Anger was increasingly formed in Visor, both of her eyes began to turn reddish, accompanied by her face that began to turn into a horrible figure. Watch out, Kaneko-chan. Issei shouted when he saw that Kaneko's body was about to be swallowed intact by Visor's stomach that had turned into a mouth. With just a blink of an eye, Kaneko's small body had been swallowed raw by Visor, leaving not the slightest part of her body. Issei couldn't believe what he saw at all. He should have helped Kaneko, he shouldn't have let the beautiful girl die. However, strangeness occurred in Visor's stomach. It can be seen if the stray devil's stomach is moving. Visor's stomach slowly began to open again and revealed Kaneko's figure, who was forcibly opening Visor's stomach from the inside. The girl's clothes also looked torn, exposed to Visor's dangerous stomach fluid. While Issei, who saw it, naturally felt very relieved because the cute and beautiful girl was not dead at all and was still alive. "Take this," Kaneko said flatly, punching Visor in the abdomen with her petite right hand. However, Kaneko's fist was not an indiscriminate fist. Visor's body, which was hit by Kaneko's fist, immediately bounced far enough and hit the wall very hard. It is certain that Kaneko is a rook, with her characteristic of having very strong physical strength and surpassing other Ria's pieces. As a rook, Kaneko has very strong physical strength, surpassing all of us. Ria said proudly, looking at Kaneko, who was standing not far in front of her. Then, Akeno called Rias to Akeno to quickly complete the Visor and complete the task for tonight. "Okay, but you," Akeno said with his distinctive voice, walking closer to Visor's body lying helpless on the ground. Even though I still want to play with you, but it seems to have to end here," Akeno said in her melodious voice, the look on her face that seemed so very excited while raising her right arm up. Blare. A huge lightning bolt directly struck Visor's body non-stop, accompanied by Akeno's hideous laughter. Visor's shout echoed throughout the room, making anyone who heard it feel compassion. "Akeno is my queen, she controls magic very much, the strongest piece I have. And also, she was a sadistic woman," Ria said with a big smile when she saw the torture Vir felt by Akeno. "Enough, Akeno," Ria said, telling Akeno to stop. But you," Akeno sighed with a sense of disappointment inside her because she still wanted to play around with Visor. However, a very unexpected incident happened where when Rias was stepping her foot to approach Visor, Visor's hand that had been cut off suddenly twitched and shot towards Rias at high speed. This was immediately realized by Ryuma. By pointing his left arm at the Visor's arm, that arm immediately stopped in the air with a black mist surrounding it. "Thank you, Ryuma," Ria said softly, giving Ryuma a gentle smile for saving her. "Then, for you, Visor. Since you have betrayed your own master and killed him to gain freedom, I, as the heir of the Grimory family, will punish you," Ria said with dignity and domineering, standing right in front of the helpless Visor and began to unleash her strength. A deep red magic circle formed right in front of Rias, emitting a deep red light that shone very brightly. Then, from within the magic circle, a pitch red lightning appeared that immediately struck Visor's body heavily. Blast. Arg. A heartbreaking cry came from Visor's mouth as Ria's Grimory's devastating force touched her body. Then in the next second, Visor's body had vanished, turning into tiny grains of dust that could barely be seen by normal human eyes. "We're done," Ria said as she turned her body towards her pieces, revealing a beautiful smile on her pretty face. After seeing for himself how the devil nobles acted, a faint smile suddenly formed on Ryuma's face. It was not the first time he saw this kind of thing, even this kind of thing had already impressed him, of course. After thousands of years ago, seeing devil cooperate in conquering their enemies, he didn't mind it all at all, only that he became reminded of his past. Cooperation with devil was not strange to him because basically, he had experienced it himself long before the evil pieces inside him were created. End of the part 1. So how was this story? I hope you like it. And if you like it, share this story with your friends and like the video too. And don't forget to subscribe our channel for daily awesome fanfiction. Okay, it's time for me to go. Bye bye.